Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with the Oxymoron issue 1. And I remember when this book came out, the way that it got me hooked is they had a YouTube trailer for it. And the way that the creators introduced it is they said, imagine a world where the Joker came to Gotham and there was no Batman. Now, starting with that, because I'm a huge Batman fan, that hooked me. However, going through and seeing what they were actually doing with their own creation, the Oxymoron, as you see here, I was instantly hooked. If you are a fan of the movie Seven, then this book is definitely going to be up your alley. So before we dive into everything, let's talk about who created Oxymoron, the Loveliest Nightmare. Story by Taylor James and John Lees. Script by John Lees. Art by Alex Cormack. Colors by Jules Rivera. And as you can see, there's everyone else working on the book. And if I remember correctly, this book came out back in 2015. And what we're seeing here is when they were promoting the comic book, I appreciated that they let you download the first issue for free. They would email you a PDF after you said that you wanted it. And so I got that, and then after I read this first issue, I went back to their website and I bought the collected trade, and I'm so glad that I did. So with that said, let's talk about this opening page. This is our main character, Mary. And as you can see, the dialogue says, "The first thing I need to make clear to you is that you are not in control. You have become a player in something much larger than yourself. You no longer have a life. You have a purpose, a role to play. Oh, I sympathize with your need for agency, to carve some meaning from the cruel, shrieking nothing of your existence. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to make order out of chaos. To know, do you know how it feels, Mary, to be forced to watch on, helpless, as your cozy little dream world collapses? You will, my dear. You will." And the pacing of the dialogue with the boxes here just sets the tone. We see that something's wrong with her. There's a gentleman next to her, and as we can see, the visuals are very graphic. And you just see the helplessness in her eyes. We can see that he was someone near and dear to her. She says, "Jim?" And then we cut to 6 months later, and we see as she's opening up her eyes to 6 months later, we still see it's time to open your eyes. And we can see something's going on because we get the mirror reflection, taking the pills, and then I like the way that we lead down and we find out that she is a police officer. And then we get brought into her world, and we find out that Jim was her partner. He passed away. He was murdered in front of her eyes, and that's what we just saw. And the police chief here finally leads into saying, "You know your condition better than me. You're advised to avoid stress." And what I like here is, okay, we find out she has a condition. She's taking pills for it, yet we don't know what. And here, she kind of has that survivor's guilt. She says, "Commissioner Donahue, sir, I appreciate you trying to save my feelings, but I'm not an idiot. The only reason I still have my job on the force is because you have my back. You always have. But as far as the rest of the precinct is concerned, I shouldn't be here." And you can tell that because of what happened to her partner, Jim, that she's been knocked down from detective back to just doing beat work. And here, her co-workers, she says Sergeant Stokes, Detective Clark, officer now. But she knew that already, didn't you? And here, you can kind of see a little bit of the disrespect because they still blame her for the death of her partner. But they still give her a new character. And You know, it seems a little cliche, whether it be a movie, book, comic, etc., so forth. But we always need that green character, that new person to bring us into this world. And that's what we have in the form of Officer Dini. Dini? I have a hard time pronouncing her last name. But you can see she's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. She goes, this is all so new to me. I only moved here a couple of days ago. My apartment's all in bones. And you can just see the hardened cop. You drive, Dini. Me? Really? Thanks. So you can call me Deborah if you want. I don't want. Drive. Have I done something wrong? I don't want to offend you or anything. It's just, this is my first detail and I want to learn all I can. Don't apologize. Seriously, don't. If you smile and walk on eggshells, you won't get thanked for this. This city will eat you alive. You want to learn something? Try closing your mouth and listening. Swanstown might just tell you something. And I like how we go from the police department going out into the streets, and we finally find out that she lives in a town called Swanstown. And kind of see up here, George Tibbet, putting Swanstown's children first. Urban regeneration, betting on a better future. So we can see, just by paying attention to the world, because there's times where you'll read a comic book and you'll kind of get so fixated on reading the dialogue that you forget that the art's also helping telling the story. Remember, show, don't tell. That's why I love comics, is because with the dialogue and the art, it's such a symbiotic relationship to tell a story. So right here in this panel, we kind of get a really cool idea of what's coming on. So we know that since George here is in the foreground, or at least the background, that's saying something. And again, with the pacing, we know something's on the horizon. We can just feel something bubbling underneath the surface because of the opening pages. Now, with that said, let's continue. Here. Aren't you a bit old to be playing with your food, hun? Oh, but I'm in a playful mood, you see. It's going to be a magnificent day. Got some good news, I take it? I make my own good news, Betty. I feel transformative, like a wriggling larva ready to bloom into a moth. I prefer butterflies. Here, let me give you a refill. One quick question before you go, Betty. Yeah, hun? Your eyes. Would you miss them terribly if I took them out? And again, this the POV. If you guys remember from, I think it was the mid-60s, there was a movie called Peeping Tom, and it was one of the first horror stab films. I know it's not a real good depiction of what I'm talking about, but through the whole movie, before we finally find out who the killer is, the whole time the camera only shows his hands, like we see here. We get that first person, we're stuck with the killer, and we see what he's going to do to this poor waitress, and the way that he just kind of plays with her, eggs her on, brings her into a false sense of security, and then says, would you miss your eyes terribly if I tore them out? You just kind of start to feel the goosebumps go down your back. You're just like, oh shit, that's intense. So anyway, we get back. We just kind of, whew, that's a lot to take in. And sorry if I'm skipping fast, since this is a PDF. I can't skip panels like I can like the Marvel app, for example. And because of YouTube and all that stuff, I have to kind of through certain pages. Anyway, with that said, we cut back to our two characters. And Mary here, they get a dispatch to one of the big skyscrapers in the city. There's a jumper. And Mary goes up. And Deneen's like, shouldn't we wait? And she's like, oh, just tell the captain that I, went loopy and decided to go off on my own to kind of save her liability. And so we kind of start to think that this is going to be a cliche. We get, stay back, I'll jump. And if I just leave you be, you'll jump. Not leaving me much of a choice here. I'm sure this is tired bullshit you don't want to hear, but there's always something to live for. You don't know what I've been through. I think I might. Here, now, remember, we see her paralyzed at the beginning of the book with her partner dead. And then we cut to seeing her taking medication. She's talking about her disease. Here we find out why her life's a living hell and what happened to her partner. She goes, I have a condition, Addison's disease. That means my body is under attack by its own immune system. I go more than a couple of days without taking these steroids they gave me, I'm dead. Found that out 6 months ago, and it's like I fell down a hole. And so she talked about, even though you want to just sometimes give in, there's always a reason to keep living. Even if it's just to spite life for thinking it can beat you. And then this gentleman, no, I've done things, terrible things, and I can't let my family suffer for them. What, you think your family would be better off with you dead? No matter what you've done, there's no way that's true. No, you don't understand. If I don't jump, he'll kill them. And he flings himself. Oh shit. And just the look of dread and despair in this person's face. And you're thinking, why the hell is he wearing a mask? There's a reason. And it's a pretty effed up one. Now with that said, we get the media circus, and Crystal Gaines, she becomes a really big thorn through this whole series. And she goes, this is Crystal Gaines of Swanstown Network News with a breaking story that disgraced police officer Mary Clark is at the scene of the Felicino Tower suicide. She has it feel to be responsible for another death. And it's like, good God. Now this scene's important. If you look at the panels where she's looking down at the body and we see the crowd, and then she tries to, she senses something. And she looks back in the crowd, and that same face is gone. If you could point it out, let me know down in the comments. It took me first, when I first read this, I had to kind of like, wait a minute. Oh, I see it. And so she gets ringed, and basically the commissioner, who kind of let her back on the force, really says, get your shit together, Mary. He's like, you let your partner die, and you went unscathed. He's like, unscathed? I have an incurable disease, yet you still went out and got him killed during one of your episodes. I didn't know. Well, you should have. Jim Torrance would be alive if you'd bothered to find out what was wrong with you. So you can kind of see how emotions run high on both ends. And it really helps set the next beat where you find out that she's in a relationship. And you can find out the little boy absolutely loves her. And so does, I think his name's Kyle. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he's saying we need to get out of this city. He's been supporting her through this. And she's trying to say that sitting here playing house, it feels wrong. And he keeps saying, well, let's get out of here. We both know that the city's going to eat us alive. And she's like, this is all I know. She's like, I'm a lifer. And again, these two characters are really important as well. And he finally kind of gives up. He goes, well, fine, how did work treat you today? He's like, and she kind of starts to go through these different beats where she goes, it wasn't so bad. In their defense, and you can start seeing the images in her mind, I can be hard to get along with. And he just says, maybe if you'd opened up more, gave people an idea what's going on inside that head of yours. She's like, I'm sorry, it's tough to connect sometimes. So you can see she has a whole lot going on. And because, I never grew up around officers. There's no one in my family growing up that were police officers. So I can't even imagine or fathom the kind of things that they're being tormented with while they're trying to enjoy their life. I'm sure they're trained, and I respect the hell out of them for it. But just imagine sitting there trying to be with your family, and this is the shit that you see. It's too much for me personally to wrap my mind around. And that's kind of what helps with, and that's what I enjoy about this story, is just seeing how Mary's able to take all this and later in the series channel it into what she does. It's really interesting to see her grow as a character. Now, the latter half of this book, there's supposed to be a raid. Remember the mayor. I'm going to leave it at that. But the way this book ends with a chainsaw going vroom, vroom, and it's just pure freaking like Friday the 13th right here. Just intense massacreness. And then she's like, I recognize this voice. And he says, the first thing I need to make clear to you is that you are not in control. And just the way you see him standing with that chainsaw, holy crap, guys. When you read this in its entirety, whew, and especially the entire comic, it just makes you feel dirty when you're done reading. But to see the way that how Mary has to go outside the law to take this son of a bitch down, it's completely an awesome story. And I wish it had taken off more. I heard the rumbles that there was supposed to be another series, but it's 2022 now, and I haven't heard any rumblings, and it breaks my heart because it looked like they had a lot of aspirations for this character, and I'd have loved to have seen more. So, guys, with that said, if you've enjoyed Oxymoron, the Loveliest Nightmare, you may want to check Comixtribe's website to see if you can still pick it up, or check with your local comic shops. As I always say, please first and foremost support them. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little Oxy bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with you and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below, or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.